Welcome back, everybody, to the VGC Victory World Cup of VGC, sponsored by Elgato, GG Tour, and Metafi. And I'm joined by Maeve O'Rourke once again on the mic. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm so, this is my first scheduling context, my conflicts. This is my last day of casting for the World Cup. So I'm already really excited just to be here in general. But it's interesting now at this point, now that Thailand has already cemented their victory, to maybe see what these players brought as their last several teams to kind of lead in, because they had some time, I'm sure, and maybe somebody was like, I could pick something a little bit sillier here and just kind of go for it. So those are always a little bit fun for me, I think, to see kind of what players bring and what kind of is their fun option.
Yeah, as we've seen some people do before, as in Gun bringing normal Zacian non-crowned. And so we could either see some people use teams that they've used before or that fun stuff. So yeah, I think we're all holding out for that really fun stuff. But as you can see, if for some reason you've been missing the last few hours, here is the summary of the semi-final between Thailand and France. And you can see Thailand has already won. First four games done. They're out. Like, they're going to enjoy their weekend now. Like, absolutely well played.
Yeah, they have I'm sure a lot of interest in tomorrow's stream as well. Where they will find out who they will be playing, whether that be Canada or Australia. So I'm sure they would be hoping for the Australian team just because the time zones are much easier to manage between the two of them for match scheduling. However, I'm sure that there is still a lot of great competition, whether they play Canada or Australia. And that's definitely one of the reasons why we should be making sure that you all stay tuned in tomorrow for our stream of the second half of the semifinals. But we still have three more matches to go, and we still get to send off this incredibly talented French team, and I think give them the right send off that they deserve, because they have been incredibly talented. And we will be showing Aurélien and Soula, who we've actually had on stream the past 2 weeks in a row. So I think it'll be a great way as well for him to give us a proper send off of this French team.
Yeah, I agree. And Thailand are also going to want to, knowing they're now going through to next week, they're going to want to try and maybe be more reserved about their teams, but also how they're playing too. So they might want to play a little bit safer this time round, not kind of reveal their play style, maybe stick with leads that they're kind of happy with rather than mixing things up. And maybe even within the original Pokemon themselves, not reveal anything that's too spicy, like a little bit too different. So there's still a little bit of like kind of intellectual like attention that are going to be definitely on these matches. And as you say, France are also going to be wanting to do themselves the due diligence and take a few wins themselves. So as you can see, we have the live updates on the Victory Road website with all the teams that people are using as they happen live on the stream. So do check them out. As you can see, all four matches are already up there. How many games they've won, how many games have been conceded on either side, and those all important, interesting teams.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think as well, right, with these players upcoming with Aurélien and Akkarapon, I am excited to see both of them. I know you guys got that little preview of what the teams are going to be. So I know there is not going to be too much that's crazy funky from Aurélien. But first, talking about his results, he has been a dominant force in the seniors division, top 8 at World Championships this year, North American Internationals top 4, European Internationals top 4, and then in 2020, Oceania Internationals top 4. Whereas Akkarapon Wantanatawatos, Thailand Nationals 9th place, bubbled out of that top 8. So really interesting. I think there's still a lot of talent there. When you bubble, it's like the most frustrating feeling because you played as well as you could, but your opponent's resistance just sometimes becomes a little bit too much to overcome, especially in those regions like Thailand where it is so much concentrated talent, and it's very hard to get those good results because everybody is so talented.
And in the nationals, they're best of one as well. So, like, as soon as like one crit goes either way, like that's just such a game changer over the whole match. So, we don't know how his run went, but I'm sure one of those things probably happened because he seems like a very good player and is really helping out the team Thailand to be doing as well as they are here. But as you can see, we now have the team. So on Aurelian's end, he is using the same team as last week, which is Rinya's son. And on Akkarapon's end, he's also using the same team as last week, and actually won versus Casty's team, the runner-up of the World Championships. So he's already quite confident with this team, I'd say. And it's an interesting matchup too. You have the options, and it's the same restricted duo that Eduardo Cunha used to win the whole of the World Championships. So it's definitely a strong duo, and it's definitely been proven its worth.
Yeah, and it is a fun team, right? You've got the Amoonguss, Landorus, Therian, Blastoise, and Whimsicott to pair off. And facing against a team like Rinya's Sun, I think it's a really interesting opportunity to have both of those first partner Pokemon with Blastoise and Charizard as those really interesting Gigantamax users. And I think, for Akkarapon, he's going to have a bit of an interesting time maybe navigating around that Gastrodon if that does choose to come. But I think Blastoise could be really interesting. The only issue with Blastoise is that it cannot set its own weather because that G-Max move does not set the rain. It has that different secondary effect of instead adding that residual damage every single turn. So I think that is going to maybe possibly deter that Blastoise from even wanting to come, not just having the Gastrodon, but also the fact that you may be in the sun the whole time. And depending on what kind of funky tricks that Whimsicott has, it may be trying to deal with some Pokemon like that Grimmsnarl on the opposite side of the field, who we've seen in the past several games already. Grimmsnarl has just been an absolute nightmare to deal with if you don't know what it's got in that first game. So I think I'm excited to see how Akkarapon is going to maybe deal with the classic Rinya's Sun, because every team that you ever build has to have an answer for it. So I love seeing how these teams and these players end up finding different and fun ways to deal with it. However, it's going to be Grimmsnarl Charizard versus the Whimsicott and the Calyrex Shadow Rider right off the bat.
Yeah, so what you could probably argue from either of these teams is probably your go-to kind of encompass everything standard lead, right? So Calyrex Shadow is a great lead. It's just faster than everything pretty much. It often carries a focus sash. You can always take a hit. Great for kind of scouting out what your opponent's going to do. And on Aurelian's end, we always see Grimmsnarl Charizard as a really nice kind of solid lead because it enables you to potentially switch in your Groudon. You can mitigate damage. You've got speed control at the same time, as well as speed control on the Charizard with its own airstream. So going into that turn one, Charizard going for the Protect, Whimsicott going straight for that Tailwind, potentially mitigating any potential Trick Iron Ball or Thunder Wave shenanigans. But it is that Light Screen instead, so definitely going on the more defensive end on Aurelian's end. And followed up by Astral Barrage, that's going to do probably minimal damage to this Grimmsnarl.
Yeah, that light screen's definitely going to help stop some of that damage, and especially, this Charizard. I like that it has taken the turn maybe to go for a Protect instead of immediately going for the Dynamax. You may still want to kind of suss out what this Calyrex wants to do on this turn, if this Whimsicott has any sort of funky opportunities to go for something maybe like a Charm or, Tickle was another one that we've seen a little bit pop up here. Whimsicott has a great litany of just tech moves that it can stack on alongside of normally carrying something like that Tailwind, and by maybe trying to go for something safer on that first turn, you may be able to put yourself in a position where you know what that Whimsicott could possibly do to you, but instead this turn getting that Gigantamax Charizard up, having the opportunity to go for a G-Max Wildfire, because no matter what you hit, you're most likely going to break a Focus Sash on something on the other side of the field, because both of Akkarapon's Pokemon want to use a Focus Sash. Whimsicott, though, uses a Helping Hand this turn. That is going to have the higher priority against any sort of Prankster moves, but no Prankster moves from the Grimmsnarl. Instead, just another Astral Barrage and a G-Max Wildfire. G-Max Wildfire into the Whimsicott is going to do a ton of damage and actually brings it down below, so no Focus Sash here, and is going to get knocked out, which means that this G-Max Wildfire will be great for helping this Calyrex, especially if there's a Foul Play coming out, because Foul Play plus that extra damage would most likely be enough for that knockout, and there is that Focus Sash.
Yeah, so we often do see Spirit Break on kind of the Rinya's Sun comp for Grimmsnarls, but Foul Play is definitely not out of the question, and it's obviously really paying off here, as Spirit Break would not have got that KO. However, Aurélien has gone for his Dynamax, so he is at least kind of pressed that button. He's committed to the Charizard now, whereas Akkarapon has two things that he can bring in now in the Tailwind that he can now really focus on. So, not surprising we don't see that Blastoise, as you mentioned, maybe it's a pretty tough bring into a Gastrodon Sun where it can't actually reset its own weather, but Landorus is something that has been really popping off as an answer to this Charizard. The item choice kind of is a bit of a toss-up sometimes Lumberry, sometimes White Herb, which remains to be seen, and maybe even the Life Orb too, that does a huge amount of damage, like through rock falls, etc. So Akkarapon is somewhat in the driver's seat here, especially if Grimmsnarl's only way of speed control is that Thunder Wave, and it's going to be able to affect that Rockfall instantly in this next turn.
Yeah, especially, right? But if you are a Akkarapon, I know that Aurélien, I believe, has actually brought the Weakness Policy Charizard before, so you may be hesitant to get off something like a Max Rockfall to give that Charizard a Weakness Policy boost to make it a super easy knockout, possibly onto that Zacian with another G-Max Wildfire, even though it may still be threatened, and go for a Max Guard. And Max Guard from the Charizard this turn means that you're not going to be taking any extra damage, but a Reflect is a great opportunity to go for, thanks to two big physical attackers on the opposite side of the field. Behemoth Blade into the Max Guard as well, not going to do any damage, and Max Rockfall also into that Max Guard. A great way to stall out one of those turns of Dynamax and just allow for this G-Max Wildfire chip to start adding up onto the both of these Pokemon that can't switch around.
Yeah, nice play from Aurélien there, like just to stall out that like 2 turns and another Dynamax turn from Landorus there. Obviously, Akkarapon's a little bit afraid that this Charizard is going to be able to survive a potential Rockfall plus on its own, so kind of covering that with the Behemoth Blade too. But because of that play now, Aurélion's able to not only get that Reflect up last time, but also this Thunder Wave into the Zacian, and that's potentially going to make it not be able to move next turn. However, Tailwind is still up, so it's going to be able to go first, but Rockfall is actually enough. Any critical hit? I don't think so. So through the Reflect, Sand goes up, and Charizard goes down.
Yeah, and even if you're this Zacian, right, I don't think you're too heartbroken about the Thunder Wave so long as you don't get that full paralysis. You can still go for Behemoth Blade, you can still do super effective damage into the Grimmsnarl. It does have... Grimmsnarl has done pretty much everything that it's wanted to do. By getting up those screens and also by putting some pressure onto the Zacian and showing that speed control opportunity, showing that it is not something like the Scary Face, so that Thunder Wave can be really frustrating to deal with. However, the Landorus was pretty safe at that point, so at least neither of those Pokemon are too worried about the rocks moving up. But now that Tailwind has ended, the Zacian on Akkarapon's side is not going to be able to really move very quickly and is at risk of taking something like a Precipice Blades or even just a Fire Punch because the weather's going to change for this Groudon.
Yeah, it's huge now that Tailwind's gone down. As you say, that Zacian's going to be able to get off a hit at the moment. So if this Landorus isn't too bulky, it may just go straight down to a Behemoth Blade if you're not running too much bulk there. We haven't seen the Life Orb on that Landorus, so we might be looking at it as something with a little bit of bulk in it there. So it might be able to take a Behemoth Blade depending on what that investment is. But Akkarapon really wants to kind of get up an Airstream to be able to boost his Landorus above potentially this Zacian, and with an Airstream boost combined with the Paralysis, that might be enough for the Zacian to then outspeed the Groudon too. So it's still in either player's court at the moment, but I think it's going to just depend on the training of both of these Pokemons on the other side.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, right, this Landorus, it already has taken some chip damage, so that may be just enough for a Behemoth Blade to knock out, depending on how defensively that it has been trained on Akkarapon's side. So this Behemoth Blade right now, you're at a big threat of a full knockout, but that full knockout there. So you have to wonder if that extra little bit of chip damage from the G-Max Wildfire was important just to secure that knockout, and that's currently information that Akkarapon has that Aurélien does not. Fire Punch as well in the sun into this Zacian who's paralyzed. That's enough for that knockout. So now, you know, I think at this point it's a great way for Aurélien to really show, because he did not win on his last couple of streamed matches, to really show the dominance that he knows that he has, and especially try and bring out something interesting against the Thailand team. So I think it gives him a little bit more opportunity. I think if you're Akkarapon, maybe you want to go for a Dynamax earlier and just try and get Charizard off the field. But I think there's definitely some changes that need to be made, and I think one of them is making sure that your Calyrex Shadow Rider doesn't get let down so easily.
Yeah, and I think another key piece of information that Akkarapon's got is that Grimmsnarl is a Thunder Wave variant, and it revealed both the screens and the Foul Play. So it's not Trick, Iron Ball, or Lagging Tail, which is something that Landorus definitely doesn't want to see. So suddenly Landorus is actually looking a little bit better than maybe Akkarapon was thinking it was. So maybe even potentially as a lead, it could be nice here. So I think he's definitely going to go down that route into game 2. And it's definitely like he definitely has more options because of that. We may even not even see the Calyrex, to be honest, next game, especially now Foul Play's kind of come out. He's got a few other options that you can bring too. That Amoonguss, depending on its item, could be quite interesting. I know it's not going to be a Focus Sash or anything, but something like a Cobra Berry could be quite big to be able to take an Airstream, especially if Charizard is kind of checked at that point. So it's still very much in his court as to what he's going to do.
Yeah, if it's an Aqua Berry as well, you may feel really comfortable bringing that in front of something like the Charizard or the Groudon, especially because we did have a Fire Punch reveal, which is a pretty safe move. Here is that Amoonguss, like you said, paired up with Landorus. That Landorus is, well, not too threatened by something like a Grimmsnarl, who cannot go for a Scary Face in front of it. The Foul Play will still hurt quite a bit, but the Charizard on the opposite side, I think, is going to be a really nice way maybe for this Landorus to maybe get a big hit off early, especially if you go for something like a Rage Powder and just maybe just let your own Amoonguss take as much damage as possible.
Yeah, so Aurélien sticking with the tried and true lead, giving him a lot of options into this turn. Like, you could still just switch in that ground on and just do a whole lot of damage. Like, and if there's not like an Assault Vest on that in Landorus, for instance, like Wildfire is going to do so much damage into it. So, like. And plus the Wildfire, even if the Rock Ball comes out, just getting up Wildfire sometimes for a Charizard is like so good. Just put everything in range of your Zacian then in the back. Because as we can see, Akkarapon hasn't even brought the Whimsicott as a lead, so there's no threat of Tailwind. And Charizard is a very strong option at the moment, as it is now the fastest thing on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. And its Dynamax does come up first, that Gigantamax, I mean. So it's going to be able to put on a ton of pressure, but it looks like Akkarapon is going to be matching that with his Landorus. Like you said, the Max Rockfall definitely is a giant threat here, but the fact of the matter is that this Charizard is still going to be able to move first. He's got the Grimmsnarl as well, so the Grimmsnarl can put up a Reflect here and just try and keep that Charizard safe, especially. We don't know exactly what item that Charizard is. It hasn't, I believe, been revealed to us yet, but there still isn't any Sun, so at least at this point, you know you're not getting that extra boost. G-Max Wildfire, no Rage Powder, but does target into the Amoonguss this turn. Amoonguss showing as well that it is currently not holding something like that Aqua Berry, and without that Focus Sash, that is most likely going to get knocked out at the end of the turn. Max Airstream from that Landorus into the Grimmsnarl does a really nice chunk of damage as well, and is going to, most importantly, boost the speeds of these Pokemon here. So I think at this point, Akkarapon getting pretty lucky, even though he's going to still take a Foul Play. This Landorus does handle that pretty well. Spore is actually the move. That brave little Amoonguss, who is able to hang on, has put the Charizard to sleep. So even though it'll take some G-Max Wildfire damage, I think it did exactly what it needed to. And that's actually pretty close there. That's able to hang on. That is just right on the cusp.
Yeah, that looks very much calced for, in my opinion. Like, Akkarapon really making the most of the information that he got from game one, seeing that the Charizard is not Life Orb and potentially a little bit bulky with the Wings Policy, so it's not going to have that damage output to be able to KO his own Amoonguss. So, and like bringing off that Spore is like so huge. And when I saw that Foul Play coming from the Grimmsnarl on Aurélien side, I was like, oh, he's double up from the Amoonguss just to keep it safe. But no, it like gets away with it, and as well gets the speed control for his Landorus to be able to Rock Ball the following turn and potentially get the KO on this Charizard, which it has done before. But it's just so safe to just go for another Airstream, because Charizard is guaranteed to be asleep this following turn. So a second Airstream comes out, which means he can go to a third Airstream if he so wants to do in the following turn. So means his Amoonguss even faster and get even more Spores off. Oh my goodness.
There's definitely a lot going on, right? I think that Spore was huge. And I mean, Amoonguss is not going to be able to hang out for this turn, but Pollen Puffing your partner with one turn left before you get knocked out is a great way to keep this Landorus healthy on the field. It is not going to worry about taking another Foul Play now that the Grimmsnarl is out of here. And now Aurélien, I think, is kind of in a weird position where he's got to send in something like his, maybe like his own Incineroar if he's brought it, but instead, his Zacian, I think, is going to be one of your better answers to try and get damage, unless you've got something like a Stone Edge maybe on the Groudon. But at this point too, if the Groudon is the Assault Vest variant, then you're not really, the Reflect is really only what's helping you here. There isn't any way to kind of lower the attack beyond the Reflect that you've already set up. And Calyrex Shadow Rider has now come in and may be able to start getting some Grim boosts and get really scary.
Yeah, now Aurélien does have the potential for his Chancellor to wake up here. And through the Reflect, there may be a chance that it lives the Rock Ball. There may be a little bit of a roll, who knows, depending on like investment either way. And as we've seen from the HP stats, there could be a little bit of bulk on that Charizard there, so it might be enough for it to live. So Calyrex, though, being able to get that Astral Barrage off is probably going to put it in range pretty safely. And Groudon should probably not have the ability to knock out Calyrex in one shot. It is restricted. It does have some bulk, despite it being a Focus Sash. So plus the Wildfire, it might be able to hang around for yet another turn. But instead, Akkarapon actually goes on the defensive here, going for the Protect, despite having the speed control. But we shall see what happens in this turn, as Landorus using its final max turn, going for a Max Quake instead.
Yeah, that's actually a move I really like here, right? You're still boosting your special defense because once this Charizard is out of that Dynamax, then you're going to be in a good position to just try and maybe take some of those extra hits. It does wake up this turn and go for a G-Max Wildfire into the Landorus on the opposite side of the field, and that is not enough to get the knockout. Still does a ton of damage. Shadow Claw is a definitely good reason why you would want to protect your Calyrex, especially because Calyrex would get knocked out at the end of this turn thanks to that wildfire damage as well, because that Shadow Claw would hit down, break that, get it down to its focus sash, and then it would get knocked out. So maybe at this point you're trying to just get big damage onto the Groudon, and then you can start getting some Astral Barrage boosts and not worry too much about the Charizard on the opposite side of the field, because at this point it may not be able to do as much as it wants to do when it's out of its Dynamax form.
Potentially quite a risky turn there on Akkarapon's end, not targeting the Charizard with your like kind of rock ball that you were pretty much guaranteed to get off there. So, because now Landorus is in range of another Wildfire chip, and Charizard can kind of safely protect, and for the Landorus to then just going to go straight down. So, and Charizard looking pretty healthy, and might be able to take another Astral Barrage from this Calyrex that's got no boost yet. So, what's kind of was a really kind of strong position for Akkarapon. He's now like slowly kind of a little bit on the back foot here thanks to that Wildfire just chipping everything down. But he has brought his Zacian in, which is going to come in now. And because Aurélien's Charizard hasn't got any speed boosts up from Airstreams, this Zacian is still looking pretty strong going into this endgame.
Yeah, protect from the Charizard, though, just to keep it safe. Rock Slide from the Landorus, targeting into both of these Pokemon, maybe trying to fish for a flinch onto this Groudon. It does very little damage. Groudon is not too worried about it, but Shadow Claw does connect. Did target into where that Calyrex was, so Zacian does take this, but a critical hit that did a lot of damage. Solar Power now going to start maybe getting some extra build-up, and Landorus going to be knocked out this turn, sending this Calyrex Shadow Rider back in, and, you know, maybe a little bit more afraid to take something like a Shadow Claw.
Yeah, so Zacian is looking pretty low at the moment, but as long as it's the fastest thing, it can still offense a lot of pressure onto the opponent. So Calyrex and the Zacian duo coming in right now. No need for a Whimsicott to maintain this speed, so it's looking pretty strong to be able to like dish out a lot of damage. But is it? I'm not sure if it's enough to be able to like get a safe double hit KO here, especially with the Groudon being Assault Vest as they normally are. So Akkarapon is still very much in the driver's seat now. Especially as Charizard does not often carry like pretty accurate moves. But it is his final two Pokemon. Aurélien still has another Pokemon in the back.
Yeah, absolutely, right? There's still something that could switch around. Astral Barrage, though, going to hit both of the Pokemon on the opposite side. Maybe just trying to break through both of them. It's not enough to get a knockout on either one. Zacian's Behemoth Blade, though, is going to help probably take care of at least one of these two Pokemon, and that Groudon is not the target. It is actually the Charizard. Getting the Charizard off of the field then does leave both of your Pokemon open to getting hit by something like a Precipice Blades, maybe trying to see if this Groudon would miss, but Shadow Claw instead into that Calyrex. You are going to get that full knockout there as well. So now Calyrex off the field means you can only single target from this point on, and we know that a Fire Punch from this Groudon is going to do more than enough to get the knockout.
Yeah, so Akkarapon was looking pretty strong with having got that Spore thanks to that kind of one-turn sleep, and then kind of not really targeting the Charizard. It's kind of really swung around into Aurélien's favor here thanks to kind of the natural bulk on that Groudon, and Charizard being able to just offer a lot of offensive presence that it kind of needed to be targeted down here. We can see the kind of HP stats on Aurélien's Charizard there, so it might be a little bit faster here. So yeah, it's looking pretty quick. Or is that Akkarapon's end? It potentially is. No, it is Aurélien's end, yeah. So even with the faster Charizard, so no potential for crits or misses. Aurélien for France takes the game 2-0.
That was a pretty quick match, I think, for us, too. But that was not exactly the long slogs that maybe we saw for their first 4 matches of the day. But still really interesting to see both of these trainers, right, bring something. I think Aurélien got the retribution that he needed, especially because he's been, I think, his last few matches that were on stream with Reneasun, he did not manage to win. So I'm sure it's helpful just to have that kind of that big last one last hurrah, especially as you are wrapping up your World Cup season. But I still, I think he made really good adjustments, and that one-turn sleep, I think, was probably not what Akkarapon wanted to see on the opposite side of the field, and maybe ended up changing the game to be more in Aurélien's favor.
Yeah, like a second turn of sleep there would have been absolutely huge. But also that Wildfire plus that chip could have also been a slight roll. Like Amoonguss must have been on like 1-2 HP. So like that could have also maybe gone slightly differently depending on your training. But yeah, congrats to Aurélien Soula, and he is able to get a win with his Reneasun this time after kind of like losing multiple times on stream with it instead. So congrats to him and taking the first win versus Thailand for France.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, for some reason that transition scared me for a second there, but we still have 2 more matches left on the day with Hippolyte and Florian and Chayawat and Panyawat for both teams respectively. So I'm excited to kind of see exactly how it ends up shaping up, especially. I know France has been, their wins that they've had in the past few weeks have mostly been 4-3. So they have been running incredibly close sets for the past several weeks. I know they won 4-3 against the United States and what ended up being an incredibly close week of Pokemon. So I'm sure that they're definitely, there's definitely a lot of strength to this team. And it's definitely something that, the first 4 matches weren't exactly in their favor, but I'm sure they can still kind of show exactly what they want to kind of showcase for the last of it. And one thing that you said right before we started as well that I found really interesting was the amount of information that Thailand's probably going to have to hide, right? Like if they stick with a standard team and just go really standard leads, it doesn't necessarily matter too much because they can kind of save some of their funkier counter teamy stuff for whoever ends up being their opponent in the finals. And I thought that was a really interesting point you made. And I did want to bring it back because it's something that, in these team formats, it becomes really important to pay attention to.
Yeah, so stay tuned for our last 2 matches because as you can see, they're pretty good players as well. So stay tuned for some very high-level matches from France and from Thailand. And as you know, they're don't have to be like pretty good players, but they are. But you're also watching the top 4 of the VGC 2022 Victory Road World Cup. So don't go anywhere, and we shall be back with the next match very shortly.